Point of Order podcast. I'm your host, Assemblyman Josh Hoover, and today with us once again is the great Assemblyman from Placer County, Assemblymember Joe Patterson from District 5. How's it going, Joe?
Great. Good. Not the best day of my life today.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. We've also have like a helicopter outside that and all this. Apparently there's a movie filming in Sacramento today. So don't know a ton about that. But let's just get to it. We'll get it out of the way to start. Our clip of the week. Let's play it.
First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City!
Short but sweet. Not sweet. Terrible. Awful. How you feeling today?
That was rough.
Yeah.
So it was...
Just for the record, we're both huge Niners fans. So.
Yeah, that was today. Like I said, today's not the happiest day of my life. So usually people ask me, "Oh, how's your day?" And I say, "It's the best day of my life." I say that every day, but today, not saying that.
Yeah, that was rough. I mean, and I know this isn't a sports talk show, but I think we have to talk about it for a second. Like, I thought it was a great game, and I think, the Niners played very well, and, I don't really know what else you're going to do about, you give Patrick Mahomes an opportunity at the end of a game and you're going to lose most of the time. They had a lot of opportunities to spread the score out, and it didn't happen. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really blame the defense. I mean, to hold the Chiefs to 25 points, including an overtime, is pretty good. But I think, we could talk about all the mistakes. Obviously, the punt, the fumble in the red zone that McCaffrey had, things like that. But I think the biggest thing was the inability of the defense to stop Mahomes at the end. And again, I don't really blame the defense, but Dre Greenlaw's replacement, we were just talking about this, but he was targeted 9 times. The receivers had 9 receptions and a touchdown. And I mean, that's the game.
Did you see the injury? Did you? Because I went and saw the close-up injury.
Yeah.
How brutal is that? Literally just took a step and it just blew his Achilles.
Yeah. And the worst thing is he's going to be out a significant portion of next year so.
It's such a bummer. I mean, that kind of stuff, like Kittle went out with an injury, Debo went out for a little bit with a hamstring. You had Greenlaw go out for the game. I mean, all that stuff. It's just the same old, injury nightmare, right? But it is what it is.
Yeah.
My takeaway is that Brock Purdy, and I haven't been following all the analysis, but he cemented himself as the man moving forward. I think despite losing, despite all of that, he went toe-to-toe with Mahomes, looked just incredibly poised in that game. And I think, he's gonna be the guy, I think. And I was a Trey Lance guy, which I probably shouldn't admit on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, when their last 3 drives, he drove them down the field and had a touchdown and 2 field goals. And, I mean, you could always say, oh, they should have, but some of the play calling in the red zone, I think they had 2nd and 4 from the 9, and then they run it behind a backup tight end instead of just behind Trent Williams, and you lose yards. And then it's kind of like, they got holding, I think, that play, right? But I think he would have gotten into the end zone.
I mean, he also let him down on the first drive of the game, and then McCaffrey just coughed it up. So it's, what are you going to do?
I mean, he had, 255 yards or whatever. I mean, his game was just fine. He didn't have any glaring mistakes. I mean, the pressure on him was crazy for his first Super Bowl.
Thought he played great.
I mean,
we're throws.
Good at quarterback for a while. I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah. Your hot take on Twitter was that they won't win again until they move training camp back to Rockland in your district. Right?
Yes.
So that was
so for people who don't know, the 49ers used to have their training camp in Rockland at Sierra College, and all 5 Super Bowls started in Rockland in the heat of the summer training camp. And ever since they left, they've gone to 3 Super Bowls and haven't won any of them. So
That, you know what? I think it's a really good theory,
Yeah.
and maybe we should look into that for sure.
Well, I invited them during COVID when all of California was closed, basically, and Rockland wasn't. So I just said, "Hey, come back,"
That's awesome.
Instead
That's
they chose
awesome.
Arizona. So
that's rough. So, last question about the game specifically. Today, all the talk is going to be: are the Chiefs a dynasty?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear they are. I think Brady's probably Mahomes is probably the next Brady.
Yeah.
But are the Niners like the Bills now? I mean, we've lost 3 Super Bowls in the last 14 years. We made it to 7, NFC Championship games. I don't know. Like, we're losing a lot, man.
I mean, at least 2 of the Super Bowls they could have won all 3 of them. That's the crazy thing, right? But I think I don't know. I mean,
I just find it funny that Shanahan has only lost to like football gods at quarterback. I mean, Brady and to Mahomes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like, the rap is that Shanahan always fumbles, or chokes or whatever. But I mean, the dude's lost to Brady and 2 to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
So
He's not going to lose to like a Trent Dilfer or something like that, right? I mean, but Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere. I don't really think, oh gosh, this is not going to be a good take, but I don't really think, look, Mahomes is really a great quarterback and comes up. He's got sort of that instinct, but I definitely think he's beatable. I mean, it's the Niners should have and beat him last night. They didn't, right? I mean, he drove his team all the way down at the end. Niners defense is exhausted. I mean, so he did what he needed to do, but I think he's beatable. So who knows?
We'll see how that take goes over. I mean, I agree. He's obviously beatable, but
I mean, what they've won 3 of the last 4 years or something, including back to back.
Yeah.
And then have
no
they been
team
to
has
4?
ever done it 3 times, by the way, which I learned in a row, which
Niners next year.
So before we move on, you didn't watch the halftime show, you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
Usher on roller skates. I mean, come on.
I mean, I'll probably go back and watch it maybe, but my son, we had to take him on. He wanted to try out his new e-bike.
Yeah, and, that's good.
So
that's being a good dad. I like that. Yeah. My wife, that was the part she was looking forward to. So was Usher. And it was exactly how I wanted it to be. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that didn't like the halftime show. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was definitely up there. It was a good one. Yeah. But it was mostly because it was like my generation's music. So
I mean, Usher is one of my favorite entertainers ever. Yeah. Same with Justin Timberlake. I mean, they're just, they're good entertainers. Whether you love their music or not, they're good entertainers.
No, Usher was great. He had Alicia Keys come on.
Yeah.
He had, of course, Lil Jon and Ludacris. I mean, come on. Like, what more? I don't know. It was perfect for me and what I grew up listening to. Yeah. So, and then Usher on roller skates was pretty fun too. You'll have to check it out. All right, so let's get into our weekly recap. We'll hopefully this will move us on from our depression a little bit, although some of it might be depressing. It's all depressing.
As well. I read the
notes. And get our mind off the Niners at least. But just recapping the last week, first story here is governor sent CHP to Oakland to respond in force to the rising crime.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done this before. He's got a habit of doing this. I think I tweeted about like every time some news story hits, he wants to put the CHP Band-Aid on it. And what were your thoughts to that story?
Well, they also sent prosecutors to Alameda and it's interesting because it's like, well, you actually have a prosecutor in Alameda County who, by the way, refuses to prosecute crimes.
That's true.
But so they sent in people to, I guess, do the job. But at the end of the day, the lack of acknowledgement of the issue is kind of crazy. In fact, people probably saw that interview he did where he said he witnessed a retail theft when he was shopping for $380 worth of stuff in Target, by the way. And he asked the clerk why she didn't go after the people.
Yeah, we played that
things.
Last week.
Yeah.
On the podcast. Yeah. It's crazy.
I mean, the whole thing, first of all, is made up. You can't even walk around. No, it is made up. It is a lie. You can't even go into the Capitol without in the most secure places in the Capitol building without his protection detail. Right. So there's no chance
that he's
in Target without CHP there that could have apprehended those people. But I think it's totally made up and fabricated.
I like your take. Last week we had Heath Flora on, and I'll throw him under the bus a little here because he was way too easy on the governor. He basically said maybe the governor's coming around. I'm like, I think he looked pretty bad in that clip personally, but no, I mean, when does the governor go to Target? I don't know.
Well, best case scenario for the governor, assume he's telling the truth about everything.
Yeah.
You are blaming this on a retail store clerk, a female, to stop people stealing stuff. I mean, that is if he's telling the truth.
Yeah.
So I don't
either way, it's a bad look.
Either way, it's a bad look. But good news for him, at least, is that this didn't actually happen. He totally made it up, so he can do whatever narrative.
The governor's response, and what I tweeted was, he needs to actually show leadership and fix the failed policies that are leading to this stuff, versus just sending the CHP everywhere all the time.
No,
this is not how to solve the problem. It's barely a Band-Aid. I don't even know if it actually makes a real impact. And I love the CHP and what they do, but I bet they would even tell you that, this is a minimal impact at best, right?
No.
So that kind of bleeds into our next story, which is, reforming Prop 47. San Francisco Mayor London Breed and San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan came out and endorsed the initiative to reform Proposition 47. Why is the governor sending CHP everywhere but not actually jumping out like some of his Democratic colleagues now, major mayors in these major cities, and just saying, hey, we got to fix this?
Yeah. I think I'm just totally guessing. Obviously, I've never talked to him about this. But I think from what I've seen from other folks talking about it, is they see flaws in the repeal or whatever, Prop 47. Because look, it doesn't only go after organized retail theft. It also just goes after retail theft, which is a good thing, by the way, because look, organized retail theft and what the CHP and what the governor's focus on, look, we got to stop that. But also we need to stop the corner stores who are getting robbed every day. If you talk to any of them in the district, they're getting people just come in and steal stuff and go about their day, right? And what are we going to do about that? So
you're saying that some of the criticism on his side of the aisle is that it goes too far.
I think it's crazy that people think it goes too far. How about we just repeal Prop 47 altogether?
It doesn't even do that. That's the thing, right? It does a lot of parts of it, but it doesn't even repeal it fully. So I just feel like, I think it's really good news that London Breed has come out and supported this effort. I think that's a huge change that we have not seen in the last decade.
Yeah.
Since Prop 47. We have not seen a Democrat of her position come out and say, I'm getting behind this initiative. We're going to make this bipartisan. We're going to fix this problem.
Yeah.
I wish the governor would do that.
As long as we have, I'm sure you saw the hearing that occurred last week where some of the advocates for criminal justice reform showed up, and there was this great clip of a person saying the reason why people steal is because bars of soap are too expensive.
I did see that
now,
clip.
And so that's why they steal, iPhones. And but the crazy thing is that I think that what a Californian needs to recognize is those groups actually have an insane amount of influence on what happens in the legislature. If it was up to me, I would cut them out, because there is no value in saying, hey, we can't hold people accountable at all because bar soap is too expensive.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And that's what I talk with some of my law enforcement folks all the time, right? Is, most of the time we're not talking about people that are stealing food, right? We're talking about people that are stealing other goods, makeup and, iPhones or whatever it might be. So let's move on to housing affordability. So I don't know if you saw, but the realtors put out their housing affordability report that they do, I think, quarterly. I just wanted to read you a couple bullet points from it. 15% of California households could afford to purchase the $833,000 median price home in the fourth quarter of 2023. That's unchanged from the previous report. A minimum annual income of $222,800 was needed to make monthly payments of $5,570, including principal, interest, and taxes on a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage at a 7.39 interest rate. Yeah. Can you imagine? I mean, can you believe those numbers? I'm just, and then the last one here is 22% of home buyers were able to purchase the $650,000 median price condo or townhome. And even that requires $174,000 income to pay a $4,350 monthly, mortgage. Yeah. These are astounding numbers to me. And I know housing's a big issue for you, so I just want to give you an opportunity to chat about it.
Yeah, I'm the vice chair of the housing committee, and it's something that I think about a lot. There are a lot of factors that go into play about the lack of affordability. And I think a couple things that always come to mind on this is, first of all, the governor said a long time ago that we needed to build 3.5 million homes in California.
Yes, he did.
And supply changes demand, and we don't have supply. We're not even close to scratching the surface on that. And by the way, he changed his goal to 2.5 million. We're nowhere near even that.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's put no muscle behind actually accomplishing those goals. So it was another false promise he made. But the other thing that I always think about is we both have staff members that are in their mid to late 20s or maybe early 20s that I bought my first house when I was 26. I'm 41 right now. Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't, 2 generations ago or something like that. But I was a staffer in the Capitol, and my wife and I were able to buy a really nice family home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And that to us was kind of the American dream.
Yeah.
And that does not exist right now. And by the way, interest rates were very similar to what they are now. I think we bought ours at 6.25, our initial house. Yeah. So the values were obviously depressed, but they had it was in 2008. So
I was going to ask when you bought,
but it wasn't.
Was that before the crash?
It was. It was as things were kind of starting to melt shifting down a little bit, okay. But at the end of the day, there was financing mechanisms available prior to that, right? I mean, a lot of them were kind of shady and shouldn't have existed, but where people could afford houses even at higher values. But the American dream of buying a house, it doesn't exist in California right now. That's the bottom line. If you're a young married couple,
I mean, yeah, and that's if you're young and you have 2 income. I mean, just looking at these numbers, like, who's making $222,000? I mean, I know there are a few people out there making this money, but over $200,000 as a couple come in your 20s, I can't imagine the percentage is very high on that. And it's just so unattainable. Yeah. I bought my first house in 2019, so it was actually a lot more recent, and my wife and I did. And it took us many, 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 many years to actually even get to that point. I don't think we could buy the same house we're living in now today. This is only, 4 years later?
Yeah.
There's no way. It would probably be twice what my current mortgage is. And so I really feel and I feel so strongly about it, not just because we both have kids and we want our kids to be able to afford housing, but I mean, just being a younger homeowner, it's so incredibly difficult. And I don't see how young people attain that American dream right now.
Yeah.
Unless something changes.
I was listening to a podcast, The Daily, which is by almost as good as this podcast, but it's from the New York Times. And they actually had an economist on there talking about, I guess there's an index or something like that on whether you should rent or buy a home.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I think I saw that.
And the renting, it's so high. The argument for nationwide for renting is and it's even worse in California, right? Yeah. I'm a big believer that we should give people opportunities to buy homes because builds wealth.
That's how you build
all that.
Yeah, wealth for sure.
But the argument to rent is so high right now. But I do have concerns because if you have all these homes, let's just say 500,000 in the suburbs or something. They're more. I mean, you can't get a $500,000 house where I live. Yeah. But let's just say $500,000 house. I mean, and at these interest rates and people start buying them, they say, hey, we're going to rent them out. I mean, the market rate eventually of rentals, how much it costs to rent is going to start to go up as well. Too.
Yeah.
So
that's really interesting point. So, I think across the board, whether you're renting or buying right now, you're struggling.
Yeah.
So last week we talked a little bit about Prop 1. I don't know if you have an opinion on Prop 1.
Oh,
You're
I
welcome
do.
to share it. But I
Yeah.
actually want to hear your opinion. But before you share that, I wanted to uh, add a little context for why I'm bringing it up this week. So, for a lot of people, maybe that heard last week's episode, we talked kind of a little overview of Prop 1, which is going to be on your March ballot coming up in this upcoming primary election. And it's basically asking voters to approve a $6 billion bond for mental health and homeless housing and veteran, homeless housing. Um, but there was a great article in Cal Matters kind of comparing Prop 1 and the arguments we're hearing for it to a proposition that we passed. I think it was a $2 billion housing bond that we passed a few years ago called No Place Like Home. Voters who read the Yes campaign's description of the measure saw a bold promise: 20,000 new units of permanent supportive housing. More than 5 years later, the state has completed just 1,797 units. And so kind of almost as a warning shot of, hey, we get promised a lot in California. We got promised a lot on this No Place Like Home initiative. We got promised a lot when Newsom said he was going to build 3.5 million homes. We got promised a lot that we can build a high-speed rail for $33 billion, right? None of that came true. So with that context in mind, how do you feel about Prop 1?
Well, I have a lot of concerns just based on the stuff that you mentioned. Is even if it results in 11,000 beds right away, which it won't, then that's not really put a dent in what needs to happen. But it also, because this came through the housing committee, it also shifts around money from
MHSA, is that?
Or maybe it came through the budget committee. I can't remember, but it also shifts around money from the mental health bonds that pass, and give it more to homeless. And so that's been kind of controversial. But another piece of legislation that is a companion with that allows by right development of mental health facilities in all high density zones. And I think that's a problem. I am generally okay with saying, hey, look, we have local governments can get too involved into the weeds, but the big concern that I have is that there is some reason for zoning. I mean, do you want to lock down facility where you're having 5150 holds right across the street from a school? And oftentimes that is where the high density zones are, right? So the schools can serve people in those areas. So I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to play out. But another thing that I thought was really interesting about that is in the housing committee, organizations that represent local governments constantly oppose giving up local control. In this case, they supported it because of the $6 billion carrot. But you and I both know that the vast majority of that money is going to the Bay Area or LA. That's going to happen, right? And so what about the other 472 cities or whatever there are, right? I mean, but instead those organizations supported the measure because of the $6 billion. And I thought that was a mistake.
Well, and there's a lot of respected, I think, organizations supporting Prop 1, including a lot of business groups, right? And I think with the mentality that we need to do something about homelessness, which I absolutely agree that something needs to be done about homelessness. I think the question is, we've spent billions in the last 6 years or so on this crisis, and it's only gotten worse. Is this going to continue the failing trends that we've seen? Are we going to get the same results as the last $20 billion that we spent, or is it actually going to move the needle? I don't know the answer for sure, but I do have concerns. And I think the other part of this too, it almost doubles down on the concept of housing first. And that is something that continues to concern me. You and I are actually introducing a bill this week. So more to come, I guess. But that's going to basically say that we need to free up dollars to not just spend on housing first programs restricted to housing first, but actually on programs that are helping people get the help they need, getting them sober, getting them drug treatment, getting them mental health treatment. We have so many amazing community groups that are actually getting people out of the cycle of homelessness, but they're restricted from getting any of these government dollars because it's not a housing first program. People actually have to earn their housing and actually have to, get results on sobriety and things like that. So I think we'll see how the reaction goes to that, but that's going to be a bill that's coming this week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think we've talked a lot about this, but I think on this podcast, but just, offline too, that I think I've talked with homeless advocates, ones that aren't so laser focused on just their interest level, right? I mean, just going out, talking to people who run sort of these independent places. And I even had an opportunity to meet an individual who was, for the federal government, was the homeless czar, actually. And they say that there are about 15 to 20% of people that housing first does work.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the other 80%?
Yep.
And the fact that essentially 100% of state dollars, and a lot of it is because of the way federal law is written, but 100% of state dollars go towards housing first is a mistake, because even if you say it works for 50% or 75%, what about the other 25 or 50 or 80%?
In this case,
right?
80, exactly.
So the bottom line is we had to fix underlying policies. There were some policy changes that I think are good and sort of this companion measure, but
I agree. Are you talking about the conservatorship stuff? Yeah. So basically increasing flexibility of the definition of conservatorship.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's, again, the bill's so big, there are a lot to not like about it, but
correct.
But that was okay. But that has nothing to do with Prop 1, by the way. Prop 1 is just, hopefully we're not lighting money on fire.
Yeah. No, I think that's really what it comes down to, is increasing flexibility on our approach to homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really that simple. Why would we lock ourselves into a single policy solution? We do this so often in California, where we do this one size fits all approach to a problem that is multifaceted. And I just think, we need to get more creative and allow these dollars to be used in a more flexible way.
Yeah. And they don't even, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't even talk about it publicly. That's the crazy thing, is that we're saying, hey, your housing first is fine. Let's do that. But what about all these other solutions? Should we maybe think about those too? Nope.
I know. All right. Well, moving on from Prop 1, this will be our last article, I guess, in the recap section, but it's more of an alert to California drivers. So do you remember this bill from last year, creating ticketing drivers for daylighting, or for not daylighting? I don't even know the lingo right now, but drivers will need to get in the habit of leaving a 20-foot gap between their vehicle and any marked or unmarked crosswalk. Unmarked. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
The bill, AB 413, which the legislature passed last year, doesn't specify what constitutes as an unmarked crosswalk. And so there's a little bit of, I guess still questions on how this is going to be enforced. I think this year, law enforcement is going to be giving warnings for this, and then next year it'll be tickets. But this new, it's a practice called daylighting that one of our colleagues is a big advocate of, essentially giving that 20-foot gap between the nearest parked car and the corner. What was this? I can't even remember it. Was this last year or the year before?
It was last year.
Oh, it was last year. Okay.
Yeah. Are you asking my thoughts?
Yeah, if you have any. I'm also just letting people know this is coming.
Hey, that's such a nice public service. I highly doubt if you look at where we live, you got streets, because it's also the corners, right? It's not just crosswalks, also the corners.
Corners, crosswalks.
And so you're talking about just taking off so much parking spaces offline because the state said you had to, right? Nothing stops a city from being able to do these things, but the one thing that I'm really that I just don't think there's any chance that that the Rockland police or Roseville police are going to be ticketing people because they are parked too close to a corner or something like that
or whatever.
So
I mean, I think it's just good to know that it can be it can be done.
Definitely take it seriously because you never know. I'm just saying.
I'm going to forget the moment I walk out of this room today, probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a completely new, I think retraining, drivers and obviously getting it. I mean, young drivers that are taking driver's ed might remember this because they learn it when they start driving, but I'm not going to remember it until I probably get a ticket. Right?
Yeah.
But I think, and we live in the suburbs, I think the urban areas, it's going to be a huge challenge because you already have a lot of parking problems in these urban areas. So, I mean, you're talking about definitely creating even more of a crunch.
Yeah. I couldn't remember what it was, but San Francisco, a huge, insane percentage of street parking is going to be eliminated as a result. I got a question. Why can't San Francisco or any other city just say, yeah, we're not enforcing it? Right? I mean, is there a penalty to the, I don't think there's a penalty to this. Yeah, we're not enforcing this. So,
I mean, look, there are a lot of things that our police departments probably already have to make decisions on where they're going to focus and not focus.
Yeah.
I seriously doubt that this is going to rise to the level of, priority.
I hope the city of San Francisco, though, just keeps those parking spaces with their meters and says, yeah, just go ahead and park there. We're all good. All right. Yeah. I know the police aren't going to be enforcing it. What I'm saying is the city should just say, yeah, no, we need those spots, so we're going to go ahead and use them.
I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
I will say even my local PD has told me that, the traffic enforcement alone has just gone down substantially because of the needs elsewhere, the shortages in their departments and then, all this theft and all the, it's
just wait. There's going to be a law in a couple of years where they say like, oh, it's targeting certain cars, that look run down or something. It's going to happen. They're going to pass a law in a few years to stop that. It's going to happen.
And just like stop enforcement or whatever.
They're going to say, I don't know. Come up with some, don't enforce the cars that don't look very nice or whatever. I don't know.
That's funny. That's actually a good prediction. We'll have to check back on that one. All right. So looking ahead, what's coming down the pike for the legislature in the coming, month, coming weeks? I wanted to start with AB 2205, which is your bill that calls on the PUC to reduce energy costs. Give us a little just rundown of the bill and why you introduced it.
Yeah, the bill really does just direct the PUC to reduce the per kilowatt rate by 30%.
Okay.
At least. And a lot of people say, well, how are they going to do that? You got all these mandates and all these sorts of things. Yeah, we do have a lot of mandates. Maybe they should come back and say why they can't do it, how many mandates they have.
Exactly.
But not only that, my friends on the other side of the aisle pass laws all day long with no details and leave it up to the regulators, or they at least propose them just like I did, housing for all or housing as a human right or whatever it might be. Or even when you look at the CARB rules, right? Hey, by 2040 or something, we're getting rid 2035, no more gas-powered cars are going to be sold here.
No more lawnmowers.
No more lawnmowers, whatever. They just put that in the law and let the regulators deal with it. And but mine is a little different because this is just the one where it says, hey, we're not going to screw over people. We're actually going to lower your prices.
Yeah. Which is desperately needed. We have the highest energy costs, I think, in the nation, if not number one. We're up at the top. And yeah, to your point, the legislature so regularly punts to the administrative state. And it's such a huge dereliction of really what we should be doing as legislators by providing, not just, getting a press release out and saying, oh, look what we did for our constituents, but actually governing and saying, this is specifically what you need to do.
Yeah.
We don't do that. We just kick it to the regulators. And then we get, honestly, well, right now, the PUC is debating this whole fixed rate charge, right, for these large utilities. That's the type of stuff we end up getting. And then it gets into the hands of a bunch of unelected bureaucrats.
Yeah. I have a backup plan if this bill fails, by the way. But I do believe every time the legislature considers a new law or the PUC that adds costs to the price of energy, they got to be public about how much that's going to cost on your bill.
Yeah.
Because especially the legislature, because they pass so many mandates on
So
this
many
thing.
mandates.
And we have it in the health committee, by the way. If you say, hey, this plan needs to cover this
Right.
pharmaceutical or something like that, there's a whole process where they say this is going to increase your insurance rates XYZ. And I think a very similar process should happen on mandates.
Absolutely.
Because then maybe people would actually think like, hey, yeah, I don't really like that idea.
Well, you would think that a legislator would make the connection between a mandate that they want to put in place and how that will impact the consumer, but they don't. I mean, the reality is we don't think that far ahead, or at least our colleagues that introduce these bills don't think that far ahead. They don't think about the real impact.
Yeah, and if they want to pass something out like some clean air mandate on utilities and it says it's going to raise bills by $35 a month, then they have all the information they need. But also, maybe that's actually a policy decision they want to make anyways.
Maybe it is,
and that's fine.
Make the argument for it.
But you got to make the argument for it based on how much it's going to cost. I mean,
that's a good point.
So,
no, it's very true. All right, going to touch on a couple other bills that have been proposed in the last week or so. A lot going on in the autonomous vehicle world. There was two bills introduced, SB 915 and AB 2286. 915 is going to be this bill, I believe it's by Senator Cortese, that would essentially allow local governments to prohibit or require approval of local governments for autonomous vehicle testing. And then, of course, the bill from last year that we talked about on this podcast is returning as AB 2286, which would, basically require a driver in autonomous trucks. So we're going to have that debate again. Even though that was vetoed by the governor, I think it was very clear that this is not the direction California should go. I was proud to be one of the few no votes on that bill, but that is going to be discussed again. So autonomous vehicles, I mean, I don't know if you saw the video over the weekend of the Waymo car getting blown up, or not blown up, but, lit on fire in San Francisco.
It was lit on fire, right? I mean,
it was lit on fire.
Yeah. So it wasn't the
it did
car
not.
itself.
No, it wasn't. It was the people that stopped it kind of burned it down.
Anarchy.
Yeah. It was a bad luck. I'm not going to lie for the actual city, but there was also a bill, and I didn't put it in the sheet because it was just introduced, announced today, but from Senator Wiener, that is going to add a ton of new regulations for the adoption of artificial intelligence in California. So I think we're going to see a lot in this space. You and I are both, I think, on the privacy committee. So we're probably going to.
Are you on the privacy committee?
I am now.
Oh, good.
They just added me, man.
Yeah.
So that's my new job for the year.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a lot of this in privacy. I see the autonomous vehicle stuff in communications and conveyance committee as well. But what are your kind of thoughts on what direction are we going to go this year? I mean, it's going to be really interesting.
The whole thing just confuses me. I mean, we have a state agency that work together, the DMV and the CHP, to regulate these things. Right. Like we talked earlier, it's not always okay to punt it, but in this case, they do have subject matter expertise on that. Yeah. And I kind of think let the system, it's so in its infancy, and the legislature is already saying, hey, let's get involved and restrict it. I think that's the problem, is the legislature wants to restrict it. But I don't know. I don't even know what to think. I think it's it's very early in its adoption, I guess you could say.
I'm also concerned about the impact it will have, on the technology itself. Because, I mean, this is where a lot of it is happening.
Yeah.
San Francisco, LA is rolling out. I think Waymo's rolling out in LA. So we'll see how it, impacts the industry itself. But it's really interesting because there's all these complaints, but DMV has already pulled the testing permits for crews in San Francisco, on at least one occasion, because they weren't doing a good job. So it's like the process is there to hold, these companies accountable if anything goes wrong. And so I think, I'm certainly interested to have the discussion again, but not necessarily excited. I mean, I think I told Heath Flora on the podcast last week, I felt a heck of a lot less safe in a human-operated Uber that I rode in San Francisco than I did in the Waymo car that I rode in.
Oh, did you ride in one?
I did.
Cool.
And it was very weird, but it was very, very impressive. And it's like the human driver is who I don't trust. I mean, honestly, I was driving in here this morning, right? And I'm going to say it again, this guy in this stupid F-150, which I'm just playing you drive, I know.
Yeah.
But, swerves off to the right to avoid hitting the car in front of him because he didn't see him in time. And that put me in the need of having to slam on my brakes.
Yeah.
And it's like humans are really bad drivers.
They're terrible and totally distracted.
Completely distracted, completely unsafe. And I think this technology has the real potential to actually make our roadways safer versus a bill like our colleague that wants to limit cars from going over 10 miles an hour or something like that.
It's just a matter of time before all these cars are communicating with each other, by the way. So
someday, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not going to be that long. I mean, this technology didn't really exist 10 years ago, right? And in a matter of time, all the cars are going to be talking to each other, but we're not even going to be able to develop that in California if these laws pass. They're still going to be developed just in some other state.
Well, and I think, and to the extent it does slow down that process, I think it extends the amount of time it's going to take to implement technology like this. But, I think it's got real opportunity, I think, to provide an outlet for seniors who can't drive anymore, to provide an outlet, keep kids safer that are also terrible drivers, by the way. My son's 15 now, so I'm trying to start out that conversation.
Yeah.
Freaking me out, but
don't drive around Folsom. I'm not going to. I'm going around.
Well, he's not on the roads yet. I'll give everyone a warning
when
he is. But anyway, so moving on, there's another bill. Let's see, it's SB 1011, bipartisan this time. Brian Jones.
I'm on it.
You're on it. Okay, good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was similar to a bill I introduced last year, but a little bit updated. Bipartisan bill to enact a homeless encampment ban near schools, transit stops, and other sensitive open spaces. We've got Senator Brian Jones, a Republican from Santee, and then a Democrat senator from Encinitas, Catherine Blakespear, who are championing this bill together to compassionately clear encampments. It prohibits people within 500 feet of these spaces. It also requires agencies to provide the unhoused occupying the affected area a 72-hour notice of the sweep. And then offer them shelter as well. I think it's an important bill, and obviously I put forward a similar idea last year, and would like to. I'm glad to see it's got some bipartisan support.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, I don't think it's helpful for anybody to have individuals who are homeless sleep on the sidewalk. It's not healthy for them. It's not. I think it's not the proper use of sidewalks.
Sure.
Also, parks too. It creates a public safety issue. But so we have to just consider other options. Let's have a conversation about it. I do have to say that the press release announcing this bill called me Joe Patterson R-Fresno.
Ooh,
and I would just like make it very clear that I am not Jim Patterson. Okay, I'm Joe Patterson R-Rockland.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it was interesting in the press conference for this, and I don't even know if it's in this article, but Senator Blakespear, who's the main Democrat on this bill, talked about how things are constantly getting worse, right? That we've implemented these different approaches, but we're not actually fixing anything. We're seeing a growth in the issue, and so, I think she, along with a lot of legislators and local elected officials as well, are hearing from their community very loudly on this. I know that I am every day. I've talked about this, but I found needles, in the park where my kids play. That's unacceptable. That can't happen.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we don't care about people that are homeless, but it does mean that we have to take a different approach as a society and as a state.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I completely disagree with any notion that I don't care about people who are homeless. It's actually the exact opposite. I have a huge amount of concern for them. They're people with stories and families. in my family, we've had individuals who've been homeless, and I actually want to help them. Letting them sleep on the street in 30-degree weather is that doesn't help anybody. We got to get them treatment. We got to do something about that. But if they don't want to help themselves at some point, whether it's because of their state that they're in mental health wise or drugs, I don't. At some point, there got to be some. Hey, you can't. You can't sleep here. So I'd just like to notice, by the way, for this movie filming, just like in San Francisco, when the Chinese president came in to San Francisco, just like it's the cleanest downtown has been.
It's a valid observation.
Yes, so it's really weird how that works. Is that compassionate?
That we can't compassionately clear encampments around schools and parks, but we can just straight up clear encampments if there's a movie coming into
if
town.
The Hollywood elite are in town,
or
clear
government leader from another nation. Yeah,
goodness gracious,
it is really frustrating. To be sure. So. But that is a very good observation. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Because, there's not a lot of homeless encampments out there right now where they're filming, for sure. Last bill, very briefly to touch on, and I know we got to wrap up pretty soon, but this we're going to be talking again about plastic bags this year. Based on your face, I can tell this is really exciting. Really exciting update for you. So, you and I were not in the legislature yet, but there was a bill passed a number of years ago to ban the use of plastic bags in California and charge a 10-cent fee for reusable bags that are now just heavier plastic bags that we now pay for. And the grocers, I think, ended up getting that money from that deal, the 10 cents per bag. So legislators, I didn't even know this, flanked by a turtle mascot and plastic monster. So like a person covered in plastic bags. This is weird to me, but it was at a press conference to ban plastic bags statewide. This would ban the thicker quote unquote reusable bags that are currently being distributed. So this is Senate Bill 10. There's two measures. They're the same bill, SB 1053 and AB 2236. And they're basically, I guess, going to move to just paper, or is that the plan? I guess. But here we go again. We're going to have the conversation again.
Whatever. It's the biggest waste of time ever. I mean, in this segment, we've talked about homelessness. We've talked about high utility prices. We've talked about the housing crisis. And there's like no interest to solve any of those things.
I know.
But hey, those plastic bags. Now look, people can be they can task on many things, but we're not tasking on the things that actually matter to people, but those plastic bags, I'm so, I don't know, whatever. I don't even know what the bill's going to say. I don't care about plastic bags. Yeah. I got 1 million of these ones at my house.
Exactly.
And I would love to recycle them, but it's like, come on.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. I mean, again, we passed a policy to save the planet. It ended up, and I think one of the legislators introducing this bill stated the point that we actually use more now than we did before the ban. So we banned these bags for environmental reasons, and we now use more plastic than we ever have before. And it's not like California is like, growing either, right? So this isn't like so I can't believe it. It's just
strange that there are people out there that follow the law and say, hey, these little thin plastic bags aren't acceptable, so we're going to make reusable ones that are 50 times thicker. And it's just, I pay the 10 cents every time.
Yeah. I try to carry those bags around, in my car, like the whatever. I'd say like 50, maybe 60, 70% of the time I forget them at home. So what are you going to do?
Exactly.
All right, moving on. real briefly, just are you on health committee? I can't remember. You are. So single payer healthcare coming back. That was again put forward a bill that we've had. I feel like this conversation every single year. It doesn't happen. But another proposal to move California to a single payer healthcare system, I think, would be a huge mistake. We have 97% of Californians are covered today. We do need to have conversations about how we address that 3% that isn't covered, but to change our entire healthcare system to a version that's going to cost us $400 to $500 billion that we have no clue how we're going to pay for. No, I don't think that's the solution. So I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that. Since you're on health committee,
I'm not in support of government taking over healthcare, but I will say we have a lot of issues in the healthcare space and getting claims paid by, from doctors, make sure people get paid, things like that. What's covered, what's not covered. We have a lot of other issues that we can really be focusing on, but covering an extra 3% of people, again, it's a great goal, but reforming the whole system that's not the way.
That in a lot of ways is very likely going to reduce healthcare access and increase costs, right?
Yeah.
So it's it'll be interesting to watch. I think the one thing I was interested in from Senator McGuire, who I didn't mention yet, but he is the new pro tem of the Senate, basically new leadership in the Senate, someone who has supported this in the past, right? I think he's been a co-author. He was interviewed recently by Politico, was very non-committal on where he stood, basically said, well, let the assembly start in the assembly, so let them figure it out. I think he's probably hoping it doesn't get over to his house. But he's been a co-author in the past, and he's now the new leader of the Senate Democratic Caucus. So, and the new leader of the Senate. So I think it's very interesting that he is non-committal.
Yeah.
So
we have a lot of we're going to spin a lot of wheels on this, and it might even get out of the legislature, but I highly doubt this is becoming a law.
No, I don't believe so, but I've seen crazier things happen.
Yeah.
Last story I wanted to touch on, I'm signing on to a bill to essentially bring back or reaffirm the science of reading in California, also known as phonics, something that we have gotten away from as a state. There was this big push in the 90s to move to whole language reading models and programs and teaching. And I think it's safe to say now it was a complete disaster. California ranks 50th in literacy. And we'll post the article in the show notes as well. But California's literacy rate right now, only 43% of California third graders are reading at grade level. That was last year. That was according to Smarter Balance test results. Among low-income students and Black and Latino students, the rate was 70%. So only 70% of low-income students are not reading at grade level in third grade. And we know as a society, as an education system, as a state, that literacy is, I'm not going to say it's the only thing that matters, but it might be the most important thing that you could do is learn to read by the time you're in third grade for your life outcomes, for your education outcomes, for your career outcomes, literacy. And we are just completely failing as a state right now.
Yeah. Just another example of we shouldn't keep doing the same things. We really should look at other solutions, but this isn't my area of expertise.
Yeah.
But sorry about that.
Oh, you're good.
Anyways.
But
yeah, I think I see what my kids learn in school, and 3 of them, including a kindergartner, has started reading, and I think it's great. Recently at his baseball practice, his coach was telling the team, he said, hey, look, what makes you a good baseball player, not a good baseball player, is just you're a better person at playing catch. basically saying, and even when you see guys making diving catches or whatever, they're just really good at playing catch. Yeah. And if you're good at playing catch, everything else you can sort of learn how to do.
Yeah.
And obviously that was an oversimplification, but it's kind of the same thing here where it's, hey, look, if you're really good at reading, you can be good of a lot of other things because just the comprehension and all that sort of stuff. So,
I think it's a great analogy. I mean, it's the building blocks, right? It's the foundation that you build in order to become successful. And I think we got, off track for a long time in California. This is a bill that is being authored, huge bipartisan coalition. I'm so grateful to see that we have Democrats and Republicans coming together to say, hey, what we've been doing is failing, and we need to go back to what we know works, which is phonics, which is the science of reading, and just reemphasize and reaffirm that in California. So excited to see what that does for our students. We're going to wrap there. Did you have any final thoughts before we send you home?
One thing for people who watch is probably sort of, in the building type thing. Yeah. I need somebody to help me understand why we're not hearing second House bills right now. Why we're basically not having any hearings right now. Why are we not getting all the Senate bills out of the way and getting out of it? Instead, we're just going to be crazy in April, May, June, July. And it's like we could have had 4 hearings before hearings start up.
It is really incredible. I've been filling it with a lot of meetings, but we have had so much unnecessary downtime. Yeah. But this is how it always works, doesn't it?
This is especially the second. It just, look, hey, you're right. This is always, I've actually asked some of our colleagues, both sides of that, like, why do we do this? Why aren't we having committee meetings right now and doing all this stuff? And nobody knows. I mean, I asked Republicans and Democrats, like, that's kind of a good point. I didn't really think about that. So,
well, it's even weirder because of the fact that we end earlier this year. Like we end at the end of August, right? So we actually have a shorter year, and yet we're still waiting like it's the first year.
And we're going to have, 150% of the bills this time than we did last year because all the 2-year bills.
And not to mention a huge budget deficit and all those conversations. So I think it's a valid point. So let's
investigate.
I don't know if it's really that much of a mystery, right? It's like, couldn't they do this if they wanted to? The leadership? I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like, I think people are a little slow in just getting into their year, getting into the legislative mindset.
Well, when I'm Speaker of the Assembly, I will make that change.
I can't wait for that day, Joe. You count me in. I'll be there to support you when you're ready to take over. All right. So with that, we're going to wrap. Joe, thanks for coming on. If anyone has ideas for future shows, you can email the show at pointoforderpod@gmail.com. Feel free to give feedback or send ideas. You can watch and subscribe on YouTube, follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and Threads at Point of Order Pod. And you can follow today's hosts on X or Twitter for myself, Joshua_Hoover, and then for Joe at PatterDude, which is still one of my favorite handles. Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks again.